Multi-factor authentication strengthens identity assurance by requiring more than one independent proof of identity before access is granted. Rather than relying on a single secret or signal, it combines different factor categories so that compromise of one does not automatically result in account takeover. This approach directly addresses the reality that credentials are frequently exposed through phishing, malware, and data breaches. Multi-factor authentication shifts identity from something that can be copied or guessed into something that requires real-time interaction and possession or presence. When implemented correctly, it becomes one of the most effective controls for reducing unauthorized access across both user-facing and administrative systems. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to the CISS books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. One of the clearest benefits of multi-factor authentication is its ability to reduce risk from stolen passwords and reused credentials. Password reuse across services means that a breach in one environment can quickly cascade into others, even if those other systems were never compromised directly. Multi-factor authentication breaks that chain by adding a requirement that attackers typically cannot satisfy using leaked credentials alone. Even when a password is correct, the attacker must still complete an additional verification step tied to a device, token, or biometric trait. This significantly raises the cost and complexity of attacks such as credential stuffing and broad phishing campaigns. As a result, many real-world attacks fail at the second factor, even after successfully harvesting passwords. Common multi-factor authentication methods include application-based one-time codes, push notifications to registered devices, and dedicated hardware security keys. Application-based codes generate time-limited values that change frequently, reducing the usefulness of intercepted credentials. Push prompts allow users to approve or deny login attempts directly on a trusted device, providing a quick and user-friendly experience. Hardware security keys use cryptographic operations to prove possession of a physical device, offering strong resistance to remote attacks. Each method represents a different balance between usability, assurance, and operational complexity. Selecting methods should reflect both the threat model and the practical realities of the user population. Hardware security keys deserve special attention because they support phishing-resistant authentication using strong cryptography rather than shared secrets. These devices perform cryptographic challenges that are bound to the legitimate service, meaning they cannot be tricked into authenticating a fraudulent site. Even if a user is deceived into visiting a fake login page, the hardware key will not complete authentication because the cryptographic challenge does not match the expected origin. This property makes hardware keys particularly valuable for protecting administrators and high-risk users. They also reduce reliance on user judgment because the device enforces correct behavior automatically. While deployment requires planning and investment, hardware security keys represent one of the strongest forms of practical multi-factor authentication. Push-based multi-factor authentication improves convenience but introduces specific risks that must be managed deliberately. One common risk is prompt fatigue, where users receive repeated push requests and may approve one reflexively just to stop the notifications. Attackers exploit this behavior by triggering many authentication attempts until the user accepts a request out of annoyance or confusion. Social engineering can also play a role, with attackers persuading users that approving a prompt is part of a legitimate support or maintenance activity. Mitigations include rate limiting, clear context in prompts, number matching, and user education about denying unexpected requests. Push-based methods are effective when combined with safeguards that prevent abuse of human tendencies. Short message service codes are still used in many environments, but they have well-documented weaknesses related to interception and number hijacking.
Attacks such as subscriber identity module swapping allow adversaries to take control of a victim's phone number and receive authentication codes intended for the legitimate user. Short message service messages can also be intercepted or redirected under certain conditions, especially when telecommunications controls are weak.
These risks make short message service a weaker possession factor compared to application-based or hardware-backed alternatives.
While it may still provide improvement over password-only authentication, it should not be considered high assurance. Many organizations are actively moving away from short message service for sensitive access because of these structural weaknesses. Enrollment is a critical phase of multi-factor authentication because it determines whether the additional factor is securely bound to the correct identity. If enrollment is weak, attackers may register their own device or token to a victim's account, effectively bypassing the protection. Secure enrollment requires identity verification that matches the assurance level of the account, especially for privileged or sensitive access. Enrollment events should be logged, reviewed, and in some cases approved to prevent silent abuse. The binding process should ensure that only the verified user can associate a factor with their account. Strong enrollment turns multi-factor authentication into a meaningful barrier rather than a cosmetic control. Recovery options are necessary for usability, but they are also a common bypass path if not controlled carefully. When users lose devices or cannot complete a second factor, recovery mechanisms allow them to regain access, but attackers often target these paths because they are designed to be forgiving. Weak recovery processes can allow account takeover even when multi-factor authentication is otherwise enforced. Recovery should require strong verification, limited attempts, and clear audit trails to prevent abuse. Temporary access methods should be time-limited and monitored closely. A secure recovery design balances user support with protection against social engineering and impersonation. Multi-factor authentication policies should vary based on the sensitivity of systems and the level of privilege involved. Not every system carries the same risk, and applying identical requirements everywhere can create unnecessary friction. High-value systems, administrative access, and sensitive data should require stronger factors and stricter enforcement. Lower-risk systems may allow less stringent combinations while still benefiting from added protection. Tiered policies allow organizations to focus resources where they provide the greatest risk reduction. Aligning policy strength with impact ensures that multi-factor authentication supports business needs rather than obstructing them. Conditional access builds on multi-factor authentication by incorporating context such as device health, location, and behavior signals into access decisions. Instead of treating every authentication attempt the same, conditional access evaluates risk dynamically and may require stronger verification when conditions are unusual. For example, a login from an unmanaged device or an unfamiliar location may trigger additional checks. This approach reduces friction for routine, low-risk activity while increasing scrutiny when risk rises. Conditional access works best when supported by accurate telemetry and clear policy logic. It turns multi-factor authentication from a static requirement into an adaptive control. Service accounts and automated processes present unique challenges because they cannot interact with human-oriented multi-factor methods. These accounts often rely on non-interactive authentication mechanisms, such as keys or certificates. Enforcing multi-factor authentication in these cases means using stronger credential types, strict scoping, and rotation rather than interactive prompts. Controls such as just-in-time access, workload identity, and mutual authentication can provide equivalent assurance. Service accounts should be treated as high-risk identities
because they often hold broad access and operate continuously. Applying alternative but strong controls preserves security without breaking automation.
Logging and monitoring are essential for detecting bypass attempts and unusual multi-factor authentication activity. Patterns such as repeated denied prompts, excessive enrollment changes, or frequent recovery requests can indicate attack attempts. Monitoring helps distinguish user error from adversarial behavior and supports rapid response when controls are under pressure. Logs should capture authentication outcomes, factor usage, and contextual signals to provide a complete picture. Without monitoring, multi-factor authentication failures may go unnoticed until damage is done. Visibility transforms multi-factor authentication from a gate into a defended process.
Consistent integration across applications is critical to avoid gaps where some systems are protected and others are not. Inconsistent coverage encourages attackers to target weaker entry points and frustrates users with uneven experiences. Centralized identity platforms and standardized integration patterns help ensure that multi-factor authentication is applied uniformly. This consistency also simplifies policy management and auditing because enforcement logic lives in fewer places. When applications are integrated properly, users experience predictable authentication flows, and administrators gain confidence in coverage. Integration turns multi-factor authentication from a patchwork into an architectural control.
Multi-factor authentication succeeds when enrollment, recovery, and monitoring are as strong as the authentication challenge itself. Combining factors reduces reliance on passwords and limits the impact of credential compromise, but only when the full life cycle is protected. Weak enrollment or recovery processes can undo the benefit of strong factors, while poor monitoring allows attackers to probe and adapt unnoticed. Method selection should reflect risk, usability, and operational reality rather than marketing claims. When policies are aligned with system sensitivity and supported by conditional access, multi-factor authentication becomes both effective and sustainable. In that integrated approach, multi-factor authentication delivers meaningful assurance rather than superficial compliance. Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.